Hello, you. Yes, you. Let's talk. Thank you for being here. I am coming to you once again from gorgeous Bali, but today's episode is actually not from Bali. It was an episode that I recorded back in February 2022. And in this episode, I asked a dear friend of mine, Dusk Liney, to interview me. And we were chatting about, we kind of started with the theme of leadership. You might know Dusk. She's on Instagram with her business as The Listening Mama. And Dusk hosts beautiful listening circles. She is an amazing listener. She is an amazing holder of space, and she's also a really dear friend of mine. I've known Dusk for many years. First met her because she was dating my housemate at the time, who has now become her husband. And we have been through a lot. We have shared history in some ways, in lots of ways, in that we both were part of Christian circles, part of church, and have kind of moved out and through and beyond that in our different ways. And I reference that in our chat in this episode. Also, a little surprise happens in this episode. Abdo just pops up in the background on the balcony. So if you're watching the video, you will get to enjoy his little cameo appearance as well. When I asked Dusk to interview me, she was very happy to do so. And she also asked if she could do it in the format of a listening circle, which is the format that she does so much of her work in. And so I was up for that. And it's a bit of a different kind of interview. The circle is just the two of us, but it's a little bit more spacious, and it's quite an embodied experience. It's almost kind of like you'll be watching in on almost like a counselling session for me. There are moments where she asks me to check in with what's going on in my body and to share about that. And one point I stand up. And so, yeah, a little bit of a different approach and different insight. I really hope that you enjoy it and that you find it helpful. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Well, I want to start by acknowledging that we're on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung land and acknowledge elders past and present and emerging, and that this way of gathering together and listening deeply has been happening on this land for tens of thousands of years and continues to today. Yeah. So Annie, thank you so much for letting me hold the space for us to be present to more of your story.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and giving your time for this. I feel really honoured.
Well, I would love to start with the part of you that we give the language leader to. And I'd love to hear about your relationship with that word, leader.
It's something that is a really familiar word and concept for me. I had a sense, even as a teenager, that leadership was something that was in my life, would be in my life. I think it was something that even as quite a young teenager, I had teachers and people sort of tell me, oh, you're a natural leader. And so I sort of feel like I heard that. And then later in my teenage years, I remember kind of actually being like, I think that one way or another, leadership will be part of how I live and what I do. And I remember, and I can't remember if I've shared this on the podcast before, but I do remember at that time thinking, okay, well, who's around? Like, who can I model myself off? Who are my role models in this space? And I remember not really feeling like there was anyone, particularly women, or specifically women. And I remember also really clearly having the kind of thought process of like, they're not there. Oh, well, I guess I'll have to be one. Like I'll have to hopefully be an example that one day some other young woman might look and go, oh, well, there's one example at least. So it's sort of something that I've had this kind of sense of for quite a long time, with different sort of iterations of how that's shown up for me. And I think in some ways, probably because it was affirmed in me quite young, that it was this natural thing, I haven't really felt too much like, oh, I need to seek positions of leadership or I have to demonstrate leadership or whatever. I've kind of had a sort of trust, I guess, that it'll just kind of find its way through in my life if it is something that is meant to be part of what I do and how I live. And there have also been some times over the years where I've had more of a sense of like, I don't really want to be that right now.
Yeah.
It's been that there have been times when I've just felt like I just want a break. And there have been times when I've felt like I don't want to be responsible right now, and times when it's probably shown up at some times of just like, I'd like someone else to look after me for once. And but they are mostly like kind of little moments that have kind of shown up at particular times in my life, in my story, and usually they're just an indicator that I need better balance or need to take some rest. And I do feel like over time I have gotten by and large better at that balance.
Yeah. So if you just took a moment now just to close your eyes and take a breath and think about how you feel as a leader today or this week, where are you at in that rotation of feelings and experiences in relationship to your sense as a leader?
I feel at the moment, I don't feel like I need a break, like I'm not up for this. I feel quite settled in that at the moment. But it does feel at the moment like it's been quite a time, the last little while of leadership and leading Eve particularly. And so I feel, in the Yoga Sutras, they talk about stira and sukha being like strength and structure kind of, and then softness and ease. And finding that basically a yoga pose is to have both of those. And I feel that kind of in myself. I feel there's some sort of strength that I have gained through the challenges of the last couple of years. Not so much like I've flexed my muscles and my muscles feel strong, but almost just like kind of like in my bones, kind of like it's really kind of just has strengthened me. And also I feel soft and raw to some extent, vulnerable. Both of those at once.
And I feel like we've seen a lot of that strength. Can you tell us more about the vulnerability, the softness?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's been, what comes to mind right now is where it's been times of being potentially misunderstood, and in the volatility of the last 4 months or so, with even the stuff around vaccinations and not vaccination and what's a business meant to do in terms of mandates and all of that kind of thing. There was sort of no way through that with everybody feeling happy and good. It was going to be one way or another. It's just been a hard time. And it's probably highlighted for me that a lot of the time in leadership roles that I've been in, that's rarely really challenged. The whole, like, I've kind of had this idea of, I know not everybody is going to like me, not everybody's going to, respect me maybe, or agree with me is probably more the point. But that sort of has felt more theoretical than lately. It's felt more like a very real thing.
Yeah.
That there are people who will be affected by decisions that I am making, and not necessarily in a way that's going to feel good for them, and that relationships will be affected. And and that's been really hard. It's but it has also been like a I want to go. I don't know if it's just because you and me, Dusk, our history in church. I'm like, it's been like the refining fire, which I think you and I would get, and maybe not everybody will get, but it's felt refining. Like, it's felt like kind of just, it's sort of had to just get really real about what,
Yeah. So let's stay with that image, but give it, like, make it your own. So sit with that idea of this time of leadership being a refining fire for you. What's in the fire? What's been in the fire? What is it that's been refined?
I think it has been kind of really coming face to face with the possibility of people disagreeing or not appreciating, or being on the same page, and possibly even hurting people. And still having, like, not, like, opting out not being an option, and not one that I would want to necessarily take either. But to kind of have to and choose to be in it, really dig deep to do the best that I can, and to make the best choices that I can, because I know that there will be people who will have different opinions and who won't like what I do. And so it's like even more kind of important for me, like, in terms of my own integrity and being able to stand by my decisions, difficult though they may be and painful though they may be. It's not like they've all been like, yes, I decided this, and I'm like, super pumped about it. Like, some of them have been really heartbreaking choices that I've had to make, but it's like I haven't been able to or wanted to do any of it kind of on a surface level, because it's like, actually, I need to stand by this to an extent, and there will be consequences for these decisions, and nobody else, in some ways, nobody else is responsible for this decision that I'm making. And so so I think it's been, I think it's something that already is important to me. It's part of how I work. Like, integrity matters to me, and I do want to kind of give myself time and space to tune in and to make the best decisions that I can, and to lead in a way, the best way that I can, moment by moment. But it sort of just felt almost like that amplified in this time.
Yeah. And as we talk, your arms are so expressive, and you keep kind of drawing down and up, like this digging motion. You named before that it hasn't been surface for you, but you've really had to draw deep. What's that been like to really come into that deeper place within yourself as a leader?
Yeah, it's partly has just had to involve compassion for myself, certainly compassion for others, but I guess just kind of going, you're doing the best that you can, and like as much as there's the diligence and the commitment to that, like to keep, like you've got to keep showing up and doing the best that you can, there's also got to be this kind of like the best you can is enough, and
Yeah.
you're enough, it's okay, and to somewhat rest in that.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's been a big part of it, and that
Yeah.
is a real gift from this time, because I mean, I certainly over the years have had times of having to do that where I feel like, especially times where I feel like, oh, I've, not handled that particularly well, or whatever, different situations like that. I've had to get through that with compassion for myself. But it's almost been kind of just the slowness of this time lately that's just meant that has had to just be like a constant practice. Dig deep, do your best, be compassionate for yourself while you're doing it. Like, and that it's sort of all
Yeah.
going hand in hand, which I think is why that idea of the strength and softness kind of really being there at the same time is what came to mind for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
It's got a beautiful feel to it, that strength and softness together.
Mm.
Yeah. Is
Mm.
there a particular yoga pose that kind of captures how you feel at the moment in your sense of leadership?
In my sense of leadership, good question. I think I'm going to go with Tadasana, which is mountain pose, which is basically just standing, feet firmly planted on the ground, heart open, palms of the hands slightly open
Yeah.
forwards, long spine, but nothing tense about it. There's an ease about it, but also a deliberateness about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you mind like taking a moment, just like doing the pose and just sitting with the last 4 months and seeing what stirs for you, and come back and share that?
Okay, will do.
Okay.
I'll have to take out my little earphones.
That was beautiful to watch.
I feel like I'm back doing live stream yoga classes.
Yeah. How did it feel to be in that pose?
It felt lovely for me. I felt the little bits of slight tension in my face, mostly from just talking and smiling, but just kind of get a break, like just dissolve away a little bit. And I felt really aware of the thing, which is one of the things I love about this pose, but about our bodies also, just the kind of natural inclination to balance ourselves, where like in that pose, just standing, it's not actually just still. There's a little bit of like rocking slightly forward, and not with effort, but just a natural kind of then balance to come back, so you don't go all the way forward and fall over, and then your body doesn't let you go too far back before just kind of rocking you back to center again, and a little bit side to side and all of that. And it's something I really love. I love seeing that in students also when I teach yoga, that it's like this just this natural thing that we have that's inbuilt within us that kind of seeks balance, and that even when oh gosh. Okay, I don't know whether this will make it onto the recording, but Abdo decided to go out on the balcony. It's okay. He's out on the balcony, just decided to do a little cameo appearance.
But even this conversation has been an example of that. We've had so many interruptions, and I often feel like, you know, when I hold circles, that they're a little microcosm of people's lives. And so it gives me such a little snapshot of your life, you know, just your love for what you do, you know, the moments of tiredness and rest, and then being in the zone and then being pulled in a different direction.
Yeah. This is it, isn't it? But yes, so I was going to say, the thing that I really like is that there is that kind of self-regulating almost, but also like even in sometimes like we really do almost fall, or we do fall from a pose, and even then like a foot will step out to catch, or we'll put our arm out, like there's a reflex that will do that. And so you know, and sometimes it feels like life is kind of like just little off course, or little, I don't know if we'd even say it's off course, little meanders in our life. And then other times where it does feel like, whoa, that was like a real crash, or that was a real major detour or something, but that we have everything that we need to kind of to handle those things, and it's all part of it. I love that idea. And
that sense of trust that you have, that even if you're about to fall, a foot will step out and catch you. It's always been such a striking thing I've known of you, that just that trust. Like, how has that shown up for you in this season of leadership?
I think it's, you know, I think it's a lot about me knowing that actually, like in the best possible way, I'm not that important. Like I'm not essential. In another way, I'm deeply valuable and, you know, bring a unique and precious contribution. I think anyone who's listened to my podcast knows I believe that about all of us. But there's also something about just kind of going, you know what, like it doesn't all hang on me. And it's probably also from the experience of 10, 12, however many years ago, where it did feel like probably the biggest kind of fall out of my life, that has turned out to have been in so many ways the beginning of so many new beautiful things, and new sense of who I am and of freedom in my life, and empathy for others. Like so many beautiful things have come out of that. And so I guess there's some kind of trust that even the thing that feels like the worst thing can be okay. And I mean, even as I say that, like I'm conscious that, I mean, even the image of like, oh, your foot will just step out for you, like that's kind of it's like an ableist way of viewing things. There are people who their foot won't step out and catch them. and there are people who, you know, it may feel a whole lot bigger than what I've experienced. And so I don't want to minimize even my own experience, let alone anybody else's. But I think that has been, really precious learning for me on a really deep level, that good things, and just not even that good things come out of the hard things, but just that hard things are part of life, and it's okay.
Yeah. As you name that hard things are part of life and it's okay, where do you feel that in your body?
Feel it here in my solar plexus. Yeah, sort of right in my center.
Yeah. So you feel it right in your center. Yeah. How does that flow into the way you lead?
I think it flows into the way I lead in that I am okay to make mistakes, and I'm okay to admit that I have made mistakes. I generally don't feel like I need to hide my mistakes from like my team or anything like that. And even if I have a tiny bit of me that feels like I need to hide it, there's like an overriding part that's like, no, don't hide that. Like, share it, because it's important for me that I'm never promising perfection, and also that I'm modeling that for my team. So yeah, like I definitely know that there are times when I almost sort of feel like, oh gosh, like that's embarrassing to show that I messed up that thing. But at the same time, it feels like a unique type of opportunity to really demonstrate that mistakes are all part of it, like that's and and that there's no shame around that. There doesn't. I feel like that's probably the biggest thing where that shows up.
Yeah. And what you just named, that freedom from perfection, it's huge. And it's so counter to how I've been formed to understand leadership. So how do the two sit alongside each other for you?
Like perfectionism and leadership, or lack of perfectionism in Well, I think that this is where it comes, like I'm the same as you in that I have been absolutely kind of fed the idea of the sort of the higher, you go higher up by being better, kind of. And so, and if leadership is considered to be at the top, which that is something probably for us, you know, that we could talk about as a whole other thing. But it's like, yes, it's sort of almost like you have to either be better or hide your imperfections if you're going to be a leader. And I think that that's part of a whole shift in thinking around leadership that's needed. Like, I just don't think that has served us. I think, like, even just to think about some of our political leaders, and like, I think I saw a thing just last week or sometime recently where, I don't know if it was Scott Morrison or somebody had started this thing about Grace Tame, that she had smoked weed when she was a teenager or something. Like, just trying to get that off the ground of like, okay, let's bring her down. And like, I think that to anybody with any just wholeness as a human, it would just be like, that just doesn't matter. Like, it's just the most unimportant thing about her. And certainly not kind of something that means that, oh, okay, she's not fit to speak on the important issues that she's speaking on, like that somehow should derail her. But I think that that's the tactic and that's the approach of this kind of patriarchal linear style leadership, where it's just like, you chop people down by pointing out their supposed imperfections. And I just think in reality, most of us, when we just sit in our humanity, it's the imperfection in a leader that actually endears them to us and helps us to often to actually respect them. Of course, there needs to be a sense of like responsibility and that they're doing their best, and that they're, doing well in general. Like, you don't want to feel like they're completely incompetent, but I think that, there just needs to be room for some openness about whether it's our mistakes, our failures, or our perceived mistakes, our perceived flaws, all of that. Like, I just think it's like we just sort of need to take the heat out of it, like take the drama out of it, so that we can talk about them and them not be a thing that might disqualify us from being able to lead or having a right to lead in any way. Yeah.
And
I feel like I've shared that at different times with people on my team, people where I can see that they're holding themselves to just such a high account and giving themselves such a hard time when they're not meeting it. And where I say to people, like, just don't promise perfection, like don't, like, to anyone or to yourself, because it's like unnecessary and it really doesn't do much good. I don't see the benefit in holding ourselves to that.
Absolutely. And I can feel your fire and your heart for a different kind of leadership. And so I want to bring you back into that part of your body here where you feel that soft strength, that softness and that strength, and just ask you to just sit with your heart for leadership for others, of what you want to see leadership in the patch where you live, in this beautiful land we live on. What does it stir for you?
So I found myself, as I felt into that, it's almost similar to the pose, the Tadasana, the mountain pose, that feeling of like grounded feet, like feet on the ground, which for me has a sense of earth connection as well. Like it's a steadiness and kind of a sureness in some ways, but it's also like this sort of realizing that, we're supported, and the reciprocity of relationship to earth as well, like that being held. I think that that's something that we could benefit so much from. And then as I felt into that and thought of that, for some reason, just something popped into my mind, which was years ago. I remember hearing this woman speak, and I don't even know her name, and I think it was actually about relationships and handling conflict. But she said, when it all gets hard, like, I just sit back into my vagina. And she's like teaching you people, you just need to sit back into your vagina. And basically, I think, well, I can't be sure exactly what she meant by that, but what I'm currently taking from that is, just this sense of, rather than it always having to be like a driving forward and a standing up and a pushing forward and upwards, there being this sense of actually kind of sit back and bring your attention downward, and also, like, I guess as a cis woman, like that area, vagina, but even like womb space, like belly, all of it, it's an area of power and creativity and just kind of like home. So I do think there's something about that sense of kind of just giving ourselves the chance to sit back. Like I love, I think there's so much goodness in the idea of lean in for women. And I also think that there's something really powerful for us to experience in the kind of leaning back, like just sitting back into ourselves rather than always feeling this pressure to kind of insert ourselves into things like,
Yes, I love it.
Of course, talking to you, I had to talk about sitting back into the vagina.
Totally. Oh, this has been such a beautiful conversation just to really hear, those deep layers around your leadership, your experience, and your heart. And so maybe as a way to close, we can both just sit back into our vaginas. And then I'd love to just hear, just when whatever comes from that space, the last thing that you want to share for today.
Shall I share?
Yeah.
And this is probably because it's you that I'm here with, that I just feel connected with how beautiful and vital, as in kind of like life-giving it is to have friends who know you and friends that, that know you not just as leader, but I mean, that see you and can appreciate you in that role and what that takes and, all of that, but also that are just your friend and that friends that you don't need to lead them. Like you, Dusk, are one of those friends to me that means so much, which is partly just that there are times when I feel like you will hold space for me on a really deep and beautiful connected level, but also just that we can just talk crap and be silly and like that I can just kind of let loose in it in a way. Not that I'm kind of throwing away who I am when I'm leader. It's not like two different people, but it's just really beautiful to have dear friends who just kind of see all, and where it feels like even if the leadership went away, that those friendships are still there. Because I think that is one aspect of leadership that I have experienced my whole kind of most of my life, I reckon. I wouldn't quite call it loneliness of it, but the aloneness of it, that when you're leading a team or in a position of leadership, there is a certain aloneness about that. And that's part of it. And it's not entirely something that I don't like. There's something I quite enjoy about that. But to have that other part or some part in your life where there's just community and connection that's separate to your role as leader, I think is really valuable, something I really appreciate.
That's beautiful. And so, Annie, I honour you as friend and I honour you as leader. And I just, really acknowledge the parts of you that lead, the parts of you that are led and held, and just how you express that in every different space that you find yourself in. It's all just so beautiful. It's been lovely to glimpse more into that tonight.
Thanks so much, Dusk. So lovely to share with you in this way.
Beautiful.
thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that episode. I am already looking forward to bringing Dusk back onto the podcast and with our roles reversed. So I will be interviewing her. I'm sure that you could tell from this chat what a beautiful soul she is and what a wise woman. And she's also a bit kind of hilarious, but, you know, maybe we'll see if we can bring that out in a future episode. So yeah, very much looking forward to bringing her back onto the podcast in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, you can find her on Instagram at The Listening Mama, and you can see some of the beautiful work that she does, and maybe she could serve you through her services and hosting of listening circles. I know lots and lots of women have really, really benefited so much from her work in that way. So thank you very much for listening. And if you think that somebody that you know would enjoy this episode or any of my episodes, I would really love you to pass it along and to spread the word about Yes You. All right. Thanks once again. Lots of love to you. I'll talk to you soon.
Aww.
Thanks.
That was so, I don't know if you want to use it, but I loved it so much.